crime fighting, and body horror. Just the thing for kids. 1990 Dick Tracy, Coppers and Gangsters. Today on World of Stuff. Let's take a trip back. The year before, in 1989, Tim Burton's Batman was the biggest thing to hit movies and store shelves. And other studios wanted to cash in. So they looked back to the earlier days of the 40s or 30s or even 20s to see what they could dig up and make a movie out of, that they can get the rights to inexpensively or gone into the public domain. One interesting thing was that Dick Tracy here was actually purchased by the main actor of Dick Tracy himself, Warren Beatty, which he still owns the right to this day. Now, we've been promised for years a second Dick Tracy movie with Warren heading the project. It has yet to happen. We're just lucky we even have a new comic to go by, so make of that what you will. Now, if we get onto the packaging here and we look at this little bit right here, yes, that is Playmates, but it is copyrighted by the Walt Disney Company because Walt Disney had a subsidiary called Touchstone Pictures, which is how the studio that released the film itself. So even back then, Walt Disney had their hands on things, even if they weren't nearly as blatant about it as they are now. Now, getting onto the back of the package, we do see, aside from they collect them all line, we do see the points where you can collect and save up for some sort of figure or something of the like. We do see a 3-panel comic here, which kind of gives a great idea of what the character is like, and a profile themselves. Here, you can kind of get an idea what you're in for here. If you can read that, and let me pull it out for you. It kind of gives you an idea as to what you're dealing with on there, if that excites you. Anyway, moving on to from Tracy to some of the enemies he goes up against. Here we have Prune Face, known for his use of explosives and having a face that looks like that. Lips Manless, who has the dubious distinction of coming with his own cement shoes. One has to wonder how many Lips Manless figures have ended up in aquariums and fish bowls over the years. Influence, a hypnotist with a very interesting look on his face. Yeah. Flat Top, one of the more famous of Dick's villains, and yeah, it's roughly the equivalent of a Tommy gun and a noose, because he is a hitman. Yeah, real nice. And finally, we have what will be the focus of the figure. It's articulation, Steve the Tramp, which, as some of us will remember, generated quite a bit of controversy over police brutality back in the day. Now you just kind of find them everywhere and inexpensively. Now you'll notice that they just call him the Tramp here, but it's really called Steve the Tramp. Anyway, his accessories are a knife, a board with a needle in it, and a trash can lid. Considering the bio on the back, it's no surprise that he has weaponry that mean. Anyway, let's get this figure opened up and see what we got. Mint and card collectors, look away now. Yeah, part of the reason I'm opening up this one is because you've seen the packaging in comparison. So, while it won't exactly be most aesthetic thing, but at least it's there. I'll probably just kind of leave that as is and just kind of work my way around it. Anyway, opening up the figure. Okay. The cannon stand, but it's a little unwieldy. Get him his weapons here. And there we go. Yay. Now, as we look at the figure itself, there is some decent touches here and there. aside from the rather unsettling face. There, you do see patches and rough spots on some of the gangster clothing as well, but not quite like Steve here. Let's see now, what can we do? Should be rubbery enough. Should be rubbery enough to do this one. Okay. Oy. I can see where the... Okay, I can now see why some of the paint wasn't real great on some of these, especially 30, 40 years on. What's funny is that he does indeed have a the hand that holds a gun, but he doesn't have a gun himself. So make of that what you will. Okay, there we go. Steve is armed for combat. Getting on articulation, we have a rotating head, limited due to the sculpting. Full rotation for the arms. Rotating wrist. Both are rotate very well. Nothing for the waist, and I'd imagine ball stems for the hips. A basic suite of articulation, but it does get the job done if you're so inclined to go that route. Now, one thing I should mention about the figures themselves is that they aren't exactly the hardest thing to find. You can find them on a lot of vintage sites like Etsy or eBay. I imagine there's plenty of others you can find them at, because they were incredibly prevalent in the early 90s. So much so that it's not that big a surprise that you find a lot of discount stickers on these figures, because they had so many available. And I imagine a lot of production being put into them. They aren't very expensive. Most of them, anyway. But you can find whole lots of figures, just the figures themselves, fairly easily. Not necessarily inexpensively, but they can be found easily. Hey, these things are like over 30 years old. Gotta expect some price increase. Now, I'm willing to admit this is a fairly niche toy line that was prevalent back in the day, now not nearly as much. But if you are looking for something different and collector friendly, this is something to look into. Especially since you're never going to find anything else quite like this ever again. At least this affordably. Anyway, I am Deceptiwolf. This has been a look at some of the Dick Tracy 1990 Cops and Gangsters line. And I remind you all, free your mind, free your toys.